Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Dhena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. How's everyone today? Better than good. You're all lucky and very, very fortunate. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, there's a discussion between Shukadeva Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj, which is ongoing, as we all know, throughout the Srimad Bhagavatam. And after Shukadeva Goswami describes the pastimes of Krishna in Goloka Vrindavan and Mathura, and also in Dwarka, he describes a very philosophical discussion by the personified Vedas. And in the beginning of that discussion, there's a question by Parikshit Maharaj about how it is that we can hear spiritual sound. We can be affected by spiritual sound if we have material ears. And also that sound vibration is coming through what appears to be a material medium. After all, there's all around us the same elements that we're used to. And how is it that a spiritual vibration then becomes possible amidst those material elements? The eardrum is observable. It's something you can look at and say, oh, that's a material instrument. And the sound that's generated is air moving and touching that eardrum. So how is it, Parikshit Maharaj wants to know, that one can come in contact with the Supreme using this ear and through a medium that's apparently material? And there are a couple points that Shukadeva Goswami brings out. One is that this material world and our bodies and our senses are a gift. They're a gift by material nature, by the arrangement of Krishna. And they have two purposes. One purpose is for sense gratification. And the other is for self-realization. Can be used either way. And then Shukadeva Goswami says that this question about how material nature can accommodate spiritual sound, or how we can receive spiritual instruction through the medium of our material senses, has been going on for a long time. And he brings up how the four Kumaras discussed it, how Narayan Rishi and the great sages discussed it. And then he quotes the personified Vedas, who discuss it also. And Srila Prabhupada says that this question is a referendum on whether God is personal or impersonal. And he explains that since God is personal, any person means he has energies. When we say person, we mean that there's the energetic and there's energies that come from the energetic. And that the Supreme Personality of Godhead has unlimited energies. Parasya Shaktir Vivadaiva Shuyate Swabhaviki Gana Balakriyacha. All the varied energies, and unlimitedly so. And he's also Swatantra. He's completely independent. Abhigna, completely conscious of everything within the creation. Ekopya saura taritum jagaranda kotim yash shakti rasti jagaranda chayayaranda andantarasta paramanu chayantarastam govindamari purusham tamaham bhajami. He's within every atom. He says in the Gita, Vedaham samatitani vartamanani charjuna bhavishyani chabhutani mamtu vedan akashchana. I know everything. I know everybody. All at the same time. And he's in charge of his energies. And therefore, he can change material energy into spiritual energy. And Prabhupada gives an example, just as a machine in this world, like an air conditioner heater, can take the same electrical current and at one time turn it into cold air and another time turn it into hot air. It can be transformed according to the will of the operator. And so similarly, Krishna transforms his energies. And when one approaches the Supreme Personality of Godhead through the parampara, one's service and intention is passed up through the parampara from one spiritual master to the one's param spiritual master to one's param spiritual master, all the way back to Krishna. And then from Krishna comes back down through the disciplic succession, this internal potency, which gives one the ability to understand Krishna. In other words, he reveals himself through his own internal potency to the devotees who approach him in a humble mood. And therefore, God is knowable, but through the right process, through approaching him in submission and in humility. And those who can discern that there's a difference between working for material activities or working for a spiritual goal, and can see the difference between those, begin to use their energies and their life span to serve Krishna. Tattva vittu mahabaho guna karma vibhagayo guna guneshu vartanta iti matva nasajjade. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that those who know the truth, to understand the difference between working for devotional service, working for Krishna, and working for fruitive results, detach themselves from the material world by working for Krishna, and they exclusively put their attention to that highest purpose of serving Krishna. And therefore they don't become entangled in the material world, but they become enlightened. And one of the forms of enlightenment that a devotee gets very prominently is that he or she sees that this life is a gift. There are lots of ways in which we can become overwhelmed in this short life. We can feel oppressed, depressed. Any other pressed? Huh? Distressed. What was the other one? Suppressed. Compressed. There's a lot of pressure here that comes from all sides. And one can feel depressed. But there's a quintessential attitude of a devotee who understands that life is a gift. And that gift is meant to be used specifically to make spiritual advancement. And in the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, there are two famous verses. One says, Labvam sadulabam idam bahusam bhavante. It's very rare to get a human body. So one can start there with understanding one's gift. We've been given a gift by material nature that the scripture says is extremely rare. Labvam sudulabam. It doesn't come very often. It's very hard to get. Sudulabam means it's very difficult to obtain, human body. You can't pay somebody off. It's like Prabhupada often says, somebody, very rich man is dying and says, I'd like to put in for an American body, be born in somewhere near Palo Alto next life. And the material nature clicks away, it's little dials, and it's like, nah, you're not going to get that, sorry. Daiva netrena, it's decided by a higher power. And when one gets the human body, labham sudurlabham idam bahusambhavante, it comes after long time, a long series of transmigrations. Labham sudurlabham idam bahusambhavante, manushamartadam anityam apihadhira. It's temporary, the human life, very temporary. In fact, poets sing about how temporary it is. Kamala dala jala jivana talamala. Just like a little drop that's tottering on a lotus leaf and can slide off at any moment. Our life is that tenuous. However, it can award one the highest benefit, says the verse. Labham sudurlabham bidam bahusambhavante manusham artadam anityam apihadira. Manusham, the human body, can give one, although temporary, artadam, one's highest interest. You can reach your highest interest within this short lifetime. And another verse in the 11th canto says, Nrideham adyam sulabam sudurlabham, that the human body is a very special technological instrument, more complicated than an iPad, by far. And Nrideham adyam sulabam sudurlabham. Again it says, very rare to get this Nrideham. Deham means a body. And you've got a Nrideham, it's a human body. As the Chaitanya Bhagavat points out, Vrindavan Das Thakur says, there are many species in this world, 8,400,000 species. Only a few of them are human. And most of them have tongues. And most of them can't say Hare Krishna. They can't speak anything about the Bhagavad Gita. They can just howl and make little songs. Birds make little songs. Mostly the same one they're stuck with most of their life. They have a little vocabulary, but they can't use their tongue for their own good. Nrideham adyam sulabam sudurlabham plavam sukalpam guru karnadaram. Then the verse says that, is Srivas Pandit in that booth? Oh, another Pandit, okay. Plavam, then it compares the human body to a boat. What a nice metaphor, you've got a boat. A boat can do an amazing thing. It can go across the water. We can't walk across the water, but if you get in a boat, it's an instrument by which you can ply your way across a waterway, which is kind of miraculous, because humans don't float very well. You have to swim hard. But a boat can take you across. Plavam sukalpam gunakarnadaram. And then it says you have to get yourself a captain. You have to have good guidance. And then Krishna is speaking this verse. He says, Mayana kulena nabasvateritam. You have to have favorable breezes to propel your boat across the water. And the favorable breezes come from the Bhagavad Gita. Those are the winds. You want to know how to put wind in your sail. This is it. Mayana kulena nabasvateritam. If you take the instructions of Bhagavad Gita, they put wind in your sail and it'll make your boat go across the ocean. And then you have to make sure you check in. You have to have a captain on the boat. Don't just go out there without instruction and without somebody to guide you across, because you may get stuck. And then it says, Pumam bhavabdim na taretsa atmaha. That's bhava. Bhava means this material world. Abdim, bhava abdim means the ocean of the material world. That a person who doesn't try for this is atmaha, is a killer of his own soul. He's killing himself by not taking advantage of this. So these verses both point to the fact that we've been given a great gift. And when one feels suppressed, oppressed, depressed, a devotee can recall that I've been given a gift and I have a big opportunity to take advantage of this gift to the best of my ability to advance. And one who has this mindset then can face the adversities of life. And how does life go anyway? The great motivational speaker Brian Tracy says that life is a series of problems, one after another. That's what a series is. Punctuated every month or so by crises. Problems, a string of problems punctuated with crises, once or twice a month. Sound familiar? It's good to know. And in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Brahma bhuvana loka punar avartinorjuna mamupetya tukonteya punarjanmana vidyate. That from the highest planet down to the lowest planet, there's this series of problems punctuated with crises. Once the crises are over, then you just have to deal with ordinary problems. And this is universal. It's built into the material world. What Krishna says is tukalayam. It's a place where this kind of trouble happens. So, analyzing the situation in the light of the conversation between Parikshit Maharaj and Shukadev Goswami, the four Kumaras, who were the most intelligent beings in the universe, and Narayan Rishi, and the personified Vedas. How'd you like to sit in a room with the personified Vedas for a couple hours and just ask them anything? Well, what about this? What about that? They're the personified Vedas. Actually, they're speaking to us in that chapter. If you read that chapter carefully, when you get through the end, you'll say, I got to read it again. When you read it again, you'll say, I have to read it again. And every time it gets deeper. And everyone who reads that chapter says, that's the most amazing philosophical discourse I've ever heard in my life. And the end result is, or one who studies this carefully comes to this conclusion that I should utilize this gift. That is called Siddhanta Bulya Chitta Nakara Alash Iha Hoite Krishna Lagi Sudrid Manash. Means that if you carefully study what your existential situation is, according to the Shastra, and you discuss it with your captains who are helping to guide you across, and you can come to a philosophical conclusion that will lead to a kind of determination to use this gift to the best of your ability. And one who becomes so situated and determined to utilize the gift as much as possible, then knows how to respond to problems and crises that come upon him or her in life. If I think that this gift of the human body is meant for my enjoyment, then when problems and crises come, I become oppressed, suppressed, depressed. What do you get? Another pressed? Compressed. However, interestingly enough, one who has the proper philosophical outlook has become convinced that this human life is meant for a much higher purpose, which is self-realization. When problems and crises come, that person is actually able to accept those as an opportunity to advance in spiritual life. And how many opportunities do we get to advance in spiritual life considering that equation? That problems and crises are an opportunity to advance in spiritual life. How many opportunities do we get approximately? In a month's time, how many? The answer is a lot. You get a lot of chances. And the spiritually advanced person then takes the lesson behind every problem and every adversity, extracts it, and sees, how can I use this to advance spiritually? And it's only to those who have situated themselves properly, only those who have situated themselves properly by taking advantage of Krishna's gift can then respond to these situations properly. Think about the word responsibility. You have the ability to respond properly. That's what responsibility means. We're supposed to be responsible in the human form of life. And knowing what our purpose is, and that we have a gift, and that adversity is our friend, and there's a lesson behind every adversity that helps me to move across the ocean of material existence. Then we can respond to the environment which is so filled up with problems and crises. And this is a symptom of an advanced personality, as mentioned by Lord Brahma in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Tate anukampam susamikshamano bhunjana evatma kritam vipakam hridvagva purvir viridam namaste jiveta yo mukti pade sadaya bhak. And that is that a devotee tolerates all of these problems and crises, seeing them as Krishna's mercy. That whatever is coming to me in the form of adversity, or a heavier word, destiny. When destiny knocks at your door, how do you feel? A little freaked out. Who's at the door, dear? Destiny. You mean with a capital D? Yes. Does your heart skip a beat? It's like, what is destiny going to give me now? But devotees, Brahma said, are situating themselves always in a place where they can take that destiny. They can actually hear destiny as Krishna speaking to them. And Krishna is the most kind friend, calling us back home, giving us whatever we want. And if we know in our heart that we want to advance spiritually, and when destiny comes, just as Parikshit Maharaj, when he got the phone call that the Brahmin boy had cursed him to die in 7 days, he took it. Destiny's calling me, that's Krishna's voice. He said, that's Krishna's voice calling me now. Because I'm a king, I'm beautiful, I have the most affable family, I have power over everything. I never would have got out of this myself, so Krishna gave me a special call and he said, it's time to move out. And he was able to respond. He took it as a gift. He took the death sentence as a gift. That's advanced devotional service. So Brahma says, Te anukampam susamikshamano, the devotee's positioning him or herself in a way to catch all the mercy that's coming from Krishna. And how's it coming? Through problems and crises. Someone might say, why is God giving me so many problems? Why can't I just have what I want? But destiny is the voice of the Supreme saying, come back home, come back to Godhead. Leave behind your little rock. When I'm gardening in the backyard, I always find some little colony somewhere of little living entities. I'm weeding along or something, I lift up a little rock and they go, hey, leave us alone. I'm like, sorry. Go back to it. Here's your rock. And I always think every little universe is so insignificant. Actually, Lord Chaitanya said that all these universes put together like a huge bag of mustard seeds. Every universe just like a tiny little mustard seed. Insignificant in the scheme of things. And even all the cluster of all these universes, so insignificant. It's just in a little corner of the spiritual sky. The other day when Radhanath Maharaj and I drove up to Muir Woods, we stopped at Vista Point and we looked out at Alcatraz. And we were just thinking how, unless you stop and look at it or get fascinated with it, you kind of forget about it and just drive by it and go on to your work. But just a little prison. It's actually one of the most famous prisons in the world. When you say Alcatraz, everyone says Alcatraz. It's also Sing Sing. You ever hear of Sing Sing? You ever hear of Sing Sing? Yeah. Famous prisons. And the material world's kind of a famous prison, but unless if you did something really wrong, you're not going to Sing Sing or Alcatraz. It's just sort of insignificant little place. And the whole material world is like that also. Just off there. And the purpose is reformation. It's to give the living entities a chance to come home back to Godhead. So it's such a useful way to live, to reposition oneself, to take every adversity as an opportunity to grow spiritually, and to discipline oneself, to accept whatever comes as Krishna's mercy. And in fact, Prabhupada says in one purport in the Srimad Bhagavatam that one who learns to take the punishment of the master as a reward develops the intelligence not to repeat the same mistake. If there's a way in which I'm punished or I face adversity and I say, why me, and I avoid it, then I don't learn the lesson. But Brahma in his verse is saying, Te anukampam susamikshimano. The devotees are wide open to the voice of destiny. They're listening for Krishna's message in it. And whatever adversity comes. And they take it. Krishna's now giving me another opportunity to respond according to what he's written in the Bhagavad Gita. And he also sees that Krishna's purifying me of my tendency to stay under this little rock, to stay on the prisoners get conditioned. When they stay in the prison system for a while, they start thinking, oh, this is okay. I get my meals regularly, and I do my work, and then I come back to my cell, and after a while they get used to it. Prisoners oftentimes, when they go out, they think of a way to come back in again. They commit some crime, and then their sentence, they go back and say, I'm back. This conditioned life. So, te anukampam susamikshamanu bunjana evatma kritam vipakam. The devotees realize that I've been in this situation receiving difficulties because of the way I've positioned myself. And now I'm repositioning myself so that I can take everything that comes to me as an impetus to do more service to Krishna. And then Brahma says, one who can do this becomes the legitimate heir to Krishna's full mercy. He inherits the kingdom of God. Sadhya Bhak. He's the legitimate heir to Krishna's full mercy. And he's invited to come back home, back to Godhead. So this consciousness is something that the devotees develop throughout their lives. And by chanting Krishna's names, calling out to Krishna for the intelligence to serve him and to face all obstacles as gifts and means to become more inspired in devotional service, then Krishna gives his full mercy to the devotees. This is what the verse says. And even after one's surrendered to Krishna, Krishna knows that there may be some last vestiges, some residual, a tiny trace, an idea that maybe there's some enjoyment in this material world that I should stay around for. And he goes on to give us miseries that specifically eradicate our desire for those particular desires that we have to enjoy the material world. And so the acharyas who comment on this famous verse from the Bhagavatam say that devotees aren't getting karma like everybody else, but they're actually getting Krishna's mercy in a very specific way, that is to help them give up the last vestiges of their last vestiges of attachment to the material world and to this body. So if one can reposition one's attitude and see that this body, this life, is a gift, but many people do that. They say, oh, it's such a gift. But then they're saying it's a gift so you can enjoy material nature. There are even religious doctrines that speak about affluence in the material world. If you just pray to God, it's your birthright to enjoy that big house on the hill. And you just have to persist, and you'll get all the happiness of material world if you simply pray hard enough. God has to see that you're sincere. But it's not that kind of optimism. It's an optimism that, well, that's actually a kind of pessimism in devotional service, that the material world isn't a place that you can adjust to. That's a kind of relief to see that, oh, actually it just doesn't work out here no matter what you do. The difficulty is the last vestige where I'm thinking it'll work out. But the devotees see that this is a gift because it's an opportunity to once and for all close up shop here in the material world. Because everyone has some little business going on here. Just like those little stands you see along the roadside in India. There's these little places, wooden sheds almost, and all I see in there is these little rolls of aluminum packets that sell pan. And I can't imagine, and then there'll be 10 of them in a row, and each one of them's just got a little roll of pan, and people, how much does that cost anyway? It can't cost more than a few rupees. And somebody's sitting behind that little wooden shed all day long selling those things. I never see anybody coming up to buy stuff. And how do they stay in business? Bigger question is, why do they stay in business? It's such an insignificant thing. And the Shastra is saying, every one of the living entities in the material world, they have a little pawn shop. A little roll of those packets. Doesn't amount to anything. Even the big businesses, it's like, oh, he's worth $200 billion. He has $200 billion just set aside. The rest, that's just extra. And they're selling so many things. It's all just pawn packets. And no matter how big the building is or how fancy the logo is, it's just a little insignificant business along the roadside in the material world. And so the devotees see this as an insignificant business that is trying to survive in the material world. And they take this one short lifetime as an opportunity to close down the business. Not in any extreme or impractical way, but they don't invest their heart in it. They're not optimistic about this little roadside business, but they see the big opportunity, and that's the gift. So waking up in the morning, one can remember this life is a gift. I've been given the greatest opportunity within just a very short amount of time. If I simply follow Bhagavad Gita, that's all I have to do, and get a captain. This boat will take me right across the ocean of material existence. And it's surprising how many people have the boat and they just leave it on dry land. Or they just don't take advantage of it at all. Or they use the boat for something else, to set up a little pawn shop. But those who are intelligent will see, I have the greatest opportunity to go across this material nature, and I have the perfect boat created by Krishna to do it, and to take advantage of that opportunity. And now we'll take a couple of reflections. Anything that you heard so far that's stuck in your mind that you can reflect back.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you so much for such an enlivening lecture. And when you had mentioned that the tongue, there are so many species of life that have tongue, but they cannot speak or say Krishna's name. I was reminded that my sister Priya Gopika, she got a chance to attend like a year ago a funeral, and then she remembered, and this impacted her a lot and brought back the memory of a verse that with the tongue, when it is burned, you, a living entity, kind of regrets that I didn't use the tongue for the right purpose of taking the holy names of Lord. So it hit her so hard, like she saw the practicality at that point, and her chanting really actually was enhanced by that. And then also to reflect on the point that I had heard in one of your lectures, that our tongue is the rudder of our spiritual life. And then Srila Prabhupada had mentioned that just by taking prasad and just chanting, you will attain perfection. So I saw a lot of meaning in that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It can be shocking to think about transforming this body into another body, which I may be fully conscious, but I can't take advantage of the opportunity I have. You can imagine Bharat Maharaj, who was just on the threshold of perfection in spiritual life, and he became distracted. It's not just Facebook, but anything can distract us from material energy. Maya sneaks up in crafty little ways. And he was sitting in a pristine area in the wilderness, and he was chanting his mantra every day, constantly thinking of Lord Narayan within the sun. And his heart was softening. Tears would come to his eyes, thinking about the Lord. And in that condition, while meditating one day, he saw a deer who was drinking water at the river. And then a lion roared. And the deer sprang across the water to run away from the lion. And as she did, she had a miscarriage. And the little fawn came out into the water, and the deer died, and the fawn was left without a mother. And his mind was distracted by that. He went to take care of the little fawn, and then he became more and more attached. And then he lost his focus on his mantras, and he was only feigning meditation. And then he became fully absorbed in taking care of the deer. Sometimes while he was sitting, supposedly meditating, the little deer would come up, little horns coming out and start rubbing against his leg. And he was thinking about how cute this little deer is. He would feed it. And then he became like a mad person. He would see the moon and he would say, oh, those are like the footprints of that deer on the moon. And he died in that condition. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, yang vapi smaran bhavam tajatyante kalevaram tam tam evaite konteya sada tad bhava bhavitaha. Whatever your predominant feeling is, when you leave this body, that state you will attain, you'll be awarded that. It's a gift. You'll get another gift. And if you don't keep your boat going in the right direction, can go off and just as Bharat Maharaj did, and he then took birth as a deer, because he was thinking so much about a deer at the time of death, even though he was such an exalted person. However, Krishna gave him another gift. He's always giving. It's just Krishna's the gift giver. He says in the Bhagavad Gita, Suridam Sarvabhutanam, I'm your best friend. And he's giving the opportunity. If someone wants to forget him, then he actually gives that opportunity as the best friend. And he's also impartial, neutral. He doesn't try to interfere with our free will. And therefore, whatever we ask for, he awards. Prahlad says this. He said, just like a desire tree. Do any of you have a desire tree in your yard? If you do, be careful. Because if you go there and sit under the desire tree, try this sometime. Meditate that you're sitting under the desire tree. Well, do it right now. Just close your eyes. Close your eyes. And see a beautiful desire tree, like a big banyan tree that's over your head. You're sitting underneath it on a soft stump that has been covered with moss, so you're very comfortable. And this desire tree can fulfill any desire you have. All you have to do is just express that desire, just focus on that desire, and then your desire will be fulfilled. Now try to look and see what that desire is. What is your predominant desire right now in your heart that you're thinking about? Where does your mind go? Where does your heart go? What is your feeling? Okay, now you can open your eyes. And so Prahlad says, Krishna is like a desire tree. He is a desire tree, and he doesn't consider whether it's a lower or higher desire. He simply fulfills the desire if one has it. Were you able to focus on a desire and see what was there? Were you? I think it's kind of hard sometimes. Kanka has a point.
Hare Krishna. Prabhu, thank you for this wonderful class. I really needed this. I was reflecting on how important it is to be grateful for this human form of life, and to remember that these things that come, the problems and the crisis, that it is Krishna's mercy, and it is Krishna coming to help us advance in our Krishna consciousness, and not to be just lamenting about it when there are problems and crisis. It's a normal part of this world. So thank you so much.
Were you able to focus on a particular desire when you're sitting under the desire tree?
I did.
Okay.
Thank you. I used the tree that's right by our pond that I was sitting under right before I came here.
Krishna's responsive. That's one thing Prabhupada says in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Krishna is responsive. And he says in the Gita, we talked about this yesterday, Ye yata mam prapadyante tam stataiva bhajamyaham. As living entities surrender to me, I reward them accordingly. There's this reciprocal relationship. So Bharat Maharaj had a full intention to become perfect in spiritual life. He became distracted. He took birth as a deer. But as a deer, he was able to remember his previous endeavors. He knew, I was Bharat, I blew it, now I'm a deer. And as a deer, he actually went back to Pulastya Ashram, the place where he had been practicing before, and there were other yogis there. And as a deer, he did his Ashtanga. If you ever see a little deer doing Ashtanga, sometimes we see incredible animals like in Vrindavan. I remember in South India, there was this elephant that used to follow Ekadashi. And it wasn't that they just didn't feed him, he wouldn't eat on Ekadashi. I think it was at Guruvayur, maybe. Remember? It was back in the 80s. I don't know if he's still alive, that elephant. Anyway, the point is that Krishna's there and he's guiding us, and he can give intelligence, and he can infuse us with he can give us the complete guidance that we need to come towards him if we fix our minds and desires in that way.
So along the lines of what you're saying, Maharaj, I just wanted to submit one Bhagavatam verse as evidence. And we were just discussing that while coming here. It's from Canto 3, Chapter 9, verse number 25, where Brahma is praying for creative energy. And he says that the Lord who is supreme and is the oldest of all is unlimitedly merciful. I wish that he may smilingly bestow his benediction upon me by opening his lotus eyes. He can uplift the entire cosmic creation and remove our dejection, which is same as depression that you're talking about, by kindly speaking his directions.
Can you move it up to the Sanskrit, please? This is a verse actually that in the Archana Paddhati is meant for waking the Lord in the morning. So when pujaris go in to wake the deities in the morning, they ring the bell and they say, So sabhadra karuno bhagavan vrivida premasmitena nayanam buruham brajimban utaya vishva vijayaya chano visharam madhyagira panayatat purusha puranaha. Remembering that we're dependent on the Lord and just his glance can save us. Yes.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. I have 2 points. One is a inference that I was able to relate to, and the other is a question. So the first thing is, you mentioned like the God is a person, right? And then he has unlimited energies. The other day actually, Akurnath Prabhu also posted some updates on the Facebook where he posts his regular stuff, and he was mentioning about the 8 elements, if I'm correct, Bhumi, Rapi, Nalo, he was mentioning these are the material energies, and the Supreme also says apart from this there is also like a superior energy and you guys are part of it. And the inference he was trying to say is, don't try to exploit the inferior components, try to work for me and try to think about me. In this way you can easily reach me. So that's one point. The second thing is the self-realization versus sense gratification, right? I'm still confused. So self-realization, I'm very clear. So there is no other choice for us. You have to serve, you have to realize your relationship with the Supreme, right? You have to keep on progressing in the spiritual path. That I'm clear. But sense gratification, right? As long as we live in this material world, you're always going to be entangled in that little bit of gratification, right? There's going to be like, you want to have a house, you want to have a car, but as long as that doesn't come in the path of spiritual progress, is that okay or it's still not okay?
Yes. These are as long as one has a material body, one requires, as long as one has senses, one has to feed the senses. You can't simply starve the senses. And according to the definition of pure devotional service given by Rupa Goswami, Anyabilashita shunyam jnana karma jnanavratam anukulyena krishnanu shilanam bhaktirutama. That the pure devotional service means serving Krishna favorably without any other ulterior motive. You don't want material enjoyment, and you also don't want liberation. You simply want to serve Krishna. You're dedicated to serving Krishna. And means anushilanam means that it's a cultivation. You're using your senses to serve Krishna. Because we have senses, they have to be employed in Krishna's service. And those who use their senses in Krishna's service are also considered to be liberated even while living in this body. And another verse from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is that Iha yasya harer dasye karmana manasa gira nikila api avastastu jivan mukta suuchite. Those who are dehi, that is, they're embodied, they're in a material body, who use all their senses for Krishna's service, are considered liberated, even while in this, iha means even while here in this body, in this world, they're considered liberated because they're using their senses for Krishna. And at the same time, Rupa Goswami goes further to say, actually it's the commentary on Rupa Goswami's instructions by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Jiva Goswami, who explain that we, for instance, may have family members that need protection. This is a natural instinct to protect the family, the children, and so forth in the course of one's life. And that's not outside the realm of pure devotional service. The natural desires and instincts to preserve oneself and one's family, one's body and one's family, it comes naturally. If I do this, my knee jerks up. So those kinds of things are described even in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Kamasya nendriya pritir labho jiviti yavata jivasya tattva jignasya narto yascheha karmavi. Life's desires are never meant for sense gratification, but for self-preservation. And one should desire a healthy life, but for the purpose of increasing one's service. So in the course of that, one has to have a balance to preserve oneself. Prabhupada, after all, went on a health walk every morning because the doctor said, you walk or your heart's going to give out. So Prabhupada walked every day to preserve his heart and to stay healthy. He also was selective about when and what he ate and so forth, and he was careful about these things. And so as one centers one's life around the purpose of advancing spiritually, the other aspects of one's life also become purified.
Thank you, Lord.
Because they're dovetailed with the purpose of going back home, back to Godhead. Yes.
Thank you, Maharaj, for yet another magnificent class. And thanks for reminding us this whole thing about destiny. Every day is a struggle for us, and every day destiny comes to us. Whenever we come into a comfort zone, she reminds us that I'm here. So the whole point of coming to the realization that anything happening to you is decided by Krishna, and we have to just take it, and it actually helps us to progress in our life instead of fighting against it and why me or why this happens to me only. It's just that getting out of it, and it's something like the prayers of Kunti. So if we have that mode, that the more problems comes to me, the more I actually remember Krishna. It's more purely. Thanks for reminding us that.
You're welcome, and that's actually even in a higher level, Kunti's prayers. She says, Vipada santita sasva tatra tatra jagat guru bhavato darshanam yatsad apunar bhavadarshanam. She's saying, let more calamities come. Bring it on. because it's like bitter melon. You give it to an American, it's like, that's terrible. But after a while, it's like, oh, give me the bitter melon. It stimulates all the digestion and everything, and it's an acquired taste. And as one acquires this taste, by responding according to Bhagavad Gita, That's why we have to read Bhagavad Gita every day. Then we'll know how to respond. And when we hear the Gita every single day, then when these problems come and when calamities come, Krishna's right there, fresh in our mind. And we know how to do that. Kunti's is an even higher state, where she's so finished with the material world altogether and so clear about how she wants to remain in that dependent mode on Krishna, that she's asking for more calamities. Generally, devotees will accept calamities, but it's not like they dial them in every day and say, could I dial a calamity? Calamity.com, what would you like? Have a little application on your phone. Let's see, spin the dial, what would I like today? But one could come to that point, and the Pandavas are described in the Brihat Bhagavatamrita. They were sitting around scheming how to make another calamity so Krishna would come back and protect them. And that's the feeling of the devotees, that when I'm in my darkest hour, then I really call out to Krishna sincerely. And she says that in her prayers, that if I'm intoxicated by my position in the material world, I was talking to Radhanath Maharaj the other day, and he was noting that everybody becomes attached to their position no matter what it is. He was noting that even person has nothing, insignificant kind of existence, even meager existence. Here she's thinking, this is mine, and it's so important, and becomes proud of it even. You can be proud in the mode of ignorance, proud of your degraded condition. Oftentimes, people who are very degraded and downcast by the modes and material nature, sometimes they're very proud and arrogant. And in the mode of passion, one can become very proud. That I'm so progressive, I've built so many companies, and I'm the king. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. In the mode of goodness, one can become proud, thinking that I'm so serene, I live in the forest, and so forth. Even when Narada Muni was a little boy, and he was in the mode of goodness, he went to the forest to meditate, and Krishna revealed himself, and then he withdrew himself. And Narada became desperate to see him again, and in an unembodied voice, Krishna said, "You're a bad yogi, you're attached to the mode of goodness. You're still attached to that." And Kunti says, you have to become helpless in order to connect with Krishna completely. She says, Janma Ishvarya Shruta Shribir Edamana Madak Punan Naivarhat Yaridatum Vai Twam Akinchana Gocharam. That those who are Akinchana Gochara, they don't depend on anything in this material world, and they don't identify themselves with wealth. It says, Janma, I'm a high birth. Or Aishvarya, I'm very opulent. Shruta, I'm learned. This is another, even in devotional service, we become attached to being the most humble. Or, the false ego can appropriate anything. But there's a true state in which one can completely give one's heart to Krishna that she describes, Queen Kunti, that akinchana, I don't have anything, I'm completely helpless. And only in that state, she says, can one sincerely call out to Krishna. And when Prabhupada's commenting on the power of the chanting of the holy name, he says it's dependent on the mood of the chanter. If somebody chants thinking, I'm all right, I'm good, and they're not that interested in it, but they just do it mechanically, it's completely different from someone who's feeling completely helpless and calling out to Krishna from the bottom of their heart. And so Kunti knows that completely and is aware of the subtleties of the false ego to appropriate anything at any time and take her away from this pure chanting, purely calling out to Krishna. And so she's making it aware of it, in her prayers. that this is the perfection of devotional service. And in fact, as we've discussed before, in the Brihat Bhagavatamrita, there is this symptom of advancement called dainya, which means utter humility, which Sanatana Goswami describes. And how when one advances in devotional service, one becomes more and more humble. And he points out also that there's a way in which one can cultivate humility in oneself, but when the internal energy of Krishna, by grace, enters one's heart and blesses one, then that dainya, that humility, becomes very deep. And that facilitates one's meditation on Krishna all the time. After all, the surrender process has to do with feeling oneself completely dependent on Krishna. What do I feel dependent on? If I feel dependent on Krishna, and Krishna is my only protector, and that all the other things in this world are false soldiers. I remember when I was a kid, I used to have this fear of dying. And my brother and I would get ourselves into a frenzy sometimes. We'd stay in the same room, we'd falling asleep at night. And I'd say, "What do you think death is?" And he'd start telling me what he thought it was. Everything just goes dark and there's nothing left and it's all over. I say, "How could that be?" And what happens? And we were just speculating back and forth. And I said, "Well, I don't want to die." And he said, "I don't want to die either." And I said, "Well, I don't want to die even more than you." And then we don't want to die. And then we start crying and we run out. And my parents would be still up and we go, "We don't want to die." And I specifically remember my parents, they calm us down. They say, "You're not going to die." And I go back to my room and I think, and they're going to die too. And there was this gnawing feeling that I'm helpless. And just being in that mood and calling out to Krishna, "Please save me," and being aware of the fact that I'm in a precarious situation, I'm helpless in this world. This is the mood in which one can actually pray sincerely. Yes, Kameshwari.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. You mentioned about desire tree, and what is your desire, heart's desire. I actually remembered something that I wanted to share. When my wedding was decided, generally my mother did for all her sisters. She took to this specific deity of Lord Shiva, and we do abhishek, and certain number of times we do offer milk and bathe the deity. And the last oblation when we do, she said, she turned to me and she told me, you pray that all your heart's desire be fulfilled, and then you offer the milk. And I was not really clear in my heart what is my heart's desire. And I was blank. And then instead I just prayed that whatever my mother's heart's desire for me, let that be fulfilled. And I poured it immediately. And my mother, she doesn't know what I prayed, so I just poured it, and my mother said, "Oh, very nice." But then after coming to Krishna consciousness, having blessings from Shiksha Guru as yourself and Guru Maharaj, and being in the bona fide process of Krishna consciousness actually has changed the perspective so much that whenever there is a desire in the heart, I know that the best well-wisher is Lord Krishna, and even if something I might be desiring, actually when I go to pray to the Lord, the thing comes to my mind is that, Lord, you know what is good for me. And that's what actually came to my mind when I closed my eyes as you were asking to do this experiment. So I was feeling very grateful to be in this process that actually gives a very clear concept, actually, what is the right thing for us through our books, our shastras, and who is the person who is real protector and who knows the best thing for us, and that is Lord Krishna. So I feel very grateful for that. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you for sharing your internal workings. It's very interesting to hear the realizations of devotees who are on the path of devotional service. It's helpful because it helps us to process our own. Bali Mardan, thank you.
So I think I was also remembering you mentioned the prayer, how the materialistic men go big buildings, big houses, top of the hills, and so we are just reading also the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Canto 3, Chapter 19, where Lord Varaha killed Hiranyaksha, and how his criticism towards Varahadev is actually seen by the sages that it is actually a prayer to Varahadev, even though it is, you are protecting these Brahmins, you are protecting these, actually it is, but he is trying to criticize Lord Varahadev. And finally, also the Maitreya given his kind of a comparison called Avadharja Viransisya. So, Nirbilakyam Amritam Vacha. That means that this Amritam, which is the prayers which has no sinful purpose, is pleasing to the Lord, even though he accepted and acknowledged. And because Brahma's prayer or Indra's prayer is without any sinful purpose, that's for benevolent, either for themselves or for the other humanity. And he was giving the comparison of the prayers of the demons, even though it is accepted by the Lord, and to the prayer. And Prabhupada gave a nice purport where he mentioned that how in Bengal the dacoits, before they go for robbing, they go to the Mother Kali and pray that we are going to plunder, and she blessed it also, because it's their whole sinful desires in their heart and there is no deviation. So he blessed it. And Prabhupada gave a comment that these dacoits won't go to Vishnu temple, they know very well that Vishnu is going to purify them. So it's all in our heart how we really, as Kameswari also brought the point, the prayer to the Lord, and you also brought this whole, estimation. That's why I wanted to bring that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, dear Raj, right behind you.
Being on the edge is a very beautiful experience. In that state of helplessness, an inner joy can flow within our hearts. So I liked your point on that. And Mata Kunti's prayers are also emphasizing on that.
Yeah, it can be a beautiful experience, but sometimes not when it's happening. To be on the edge. Frankly, it can be on the edge. Is a scary place to be. Radhika Raman Prabhu gave a masterful class in New Vrindavan a few years ago about prayer, and he was talking about how even Prahlad, when he was thrown from the cliff by his father, who wanted to annihilate him because he was so envious of his own son, Krishna caught him, but he caught him right at the bottom. And he said, why did he do that? Because there's a way in which Krishna gives us an opportunity to experience that edge enough so that we can actually have time to formulate our prayers and situate ourselves in that beseeching mood to call out to Krishna, take shelter of him. But in the interim, sometimes it can be very scary. And it's not that because devotees are protected by Krishna that they don't have hard times and they don't need support on all levels. When devotees go through difficult times, we should also, and when we also go through difficult times, for instance, if a loved one dies, it's not that we just bypass the grieving process. We must do that, and also at the same time process what's happening to us through Bhagavad Gita, and come to the point of praying sincerely to Krishna to help us in the way that he sees fit. And so I'm just making the point that we don't make it clinical. In other words, it's there, the guidelines are there, but we may have to process it. We will have to process it. And we shouldn't feel that we've failed if we become disturbed at first. As long as we know how to come back to the shelter of the words of Krishna, especially by reading Bhagavad Gita. Last point.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for such a wonderful. My mouth got choked. So, thank you Prabhu for such a wonderful class. I actually wanted to mention my own position. I wanted you to tell me if that is really a good or bad position to be in. What happens is that invariably I have this disease called proactiveness. So when I wake up every morning, invariably I think of something will go wrong and I tell God, not today. And if something happens, then I invariably call out to Krishna and say, see, I told you. And I don't know if that is a good thing to be in, to kind of keep counting out things that could go wrong and keep maybe remembering God, but maybe it's just not the ideal way to do it. Is that a good position to be in, or is it not a good position to be in? Just kind of watching out for crisis.
Doesn't sound very comfortable to me. I mean, there is a way in which I have a brother who, my mother used to say, he's a catastrophizer. He would just think of everything that could go wrong, possibly. Of course, when the catastrophe happens, the catastrophizer usually that is perfectly fine. But they spend the rest of their life, 99% of the time, because usually these things don't happen, planning for the worst case scenario. And you know, our consciousness should be balanced. We should take shelter of our service and take protection from Krishna. And as Prahlad Maharaj points out, Balasya neha sharanam pitaro nrsimha, this famous verse that Prabhupada quotes again and again, that parents cannot protect their children. Doctors cannot give medicine that will save a patient, and a boat on water cannot save a drowning man. Shocking statements. It's qualified by saying, unless the Lord sanctions it. Even I wrote about this statement from the Ayurveda. When you take medicine, you have to say, Vishnu, please make this work, you know. But Prabhupada mentions in his purport that it doesn't mean that parents don't try to save their children. You don't try to save a drowning person on the water, but you depend on Krishna. So inordinate fear of the material world is not good, but also we should not be careless. We must do our duty to preserve ourselves and our families and so forth, and do our normal business straightforwardly in the material world, but depending on Krishna for the result. And part of surrender is to develop this feeling that actually I'm being protected by Krishna, and I'm being maintained by Him also. And so inordinate disturbances from the mind, proactively thinking about disasters and so forth, could be a disturbance. And maybe it could be toned down a little bit by considering the surrender process and taking shelter of Krishna's direction and His statements that I'm protecting you. I may have more thoughts later, but that's my immediate response.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, hey, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman.